Leaving Phander Valley, I continue west into one of the most remote and spectacular regions of northern Pakistan. The road gradually climbs, following the river upstream, as the valley begins to narrow and the landscape becomes more rugged. Phander is known for its wide, peaceful setting, but as I move higher, that openness gives way to a more alpine environment. The vegetation becomes sparse, the air cooler, and the sense of isolation increases. This route has long been a natural corridor between Gilgit-Baltistan and Chitral. For centuries, people have crossed these mountains for trade, travel, and seasonal movement. Today, the road follows that same path, but even now it remains far from easy. The surface is rough in places, the altitude increases steadily, and the weather can change quickly. Eventually, I reach Shandur Pass at around 3,700 meters. This is one of the highest mountain passes accessible by road in Pakistan. Just beyond the crest of the pass, the landscape opens into a wide plateau, and here one of the defining features of Shandur comes into view. The lake, often referred to as Shandur Lake and locally also known as Khukush Lake, set against the open high-altitude plain, its waters reflect the sky and surrounding hills, creating a scene that feels both vast and quiet. Unlike the deep glacial lakes of the Karakoram, this is a shallow alpine lake, shaped by snowmelt and seasonal runoff. In summer, its edges are lined with grass, giving the entire plateau an almost meadow-like appearance. This is what makes Shandur so unusual. At this altitude, you would normally expect harsh, barren terrain, but here, the land opens up, softens, and creates a natural gathering place in the mountains. It is no coincidence that this is where the world's highest polo ground is located. Right beside the lake, on this open plateau, teams from Gilgit and Chitral meet each year for the Shandur Polo Festival. The game played here is traditional and fast-paced, often described as freestyle polo, with few formal rules and a strong emphasis on endurance and skill. For centuries, passes like this were not just obstacles, but connections. Shandur linked communities on both sides of the mountains, allowing movement between Gilgit-Baltistan and Chitral. Even today, standing here, you can sense that this is more than just a high point on a road. It is a meeting place of landscapes, cultures, and histories. From the high plateau of Shandur, the road begins to descend. Gradually, the landscape changes once again. I enter the Laspur Valley. This valley marks the transition into the Chitral region, and immediately the environment feels different. The terrain softens, the colors change. Where the high pass was open and exposed, Laspur feels more sheltered, shaped by water and time. The valley is fed by snowmelt from the surrounding peaks, creating a narrow but fertile corridor. Small villages appear along the route, with fields carefully cultivated along the river. Agriculture here is still largely traditional, dependent on seasonal water and short growing periods. The road follows the river closely, winding its way through the valley. At times it narrows, cutting through rock. At others it opens up to reveal wide, sweeping views. Looking down toward Booni, the scenery becomes especially dramatic. The valley stretches out below, with the river tracing its way through the landscape. Terraced fields and clusters of homes appear along the slopes, creating a sense of scale against the mountains. This descent offers some of the most striking views of the entire journey. The mountains here are not as jagged as in the Karakoram, but they are still powerful, broad, layered, and deeply carved by rivers and glaciers. As I continue downward, the air grows warmer, the altitude drops, and with it, the sense of exposure fades. By the time I reach Booni, the environment feels almost gentle compared to the high pass. Located in Upper Chitral, Booni serves as a small regional center for the surrounding communities. It sits along the river, surrounded by fields and low hills, with the mountains rising beyond. After a long day on the road, I find a comfortable place to stay. The contrast is immediate. From the cold, open plateau of Shandur to a place that feels welcoming and lived in. Looking back on the day, what stands out is the progression, from high alpine plateau to fertile valley to a settled town, each stage revealing a different layer of northern Pakistan, and each one connected by a road that brings them together. As the day comes to an end, I finally have time to slow down. Moments like this become part of the journey, not just the landscapes, but the places where you stop, where you rest, where you take it all in. That evening, I sit down to a meal. Simple but excellent. Freshly prepared food, full of flavor and exactly what is needed after a long day riding through the mountains.